Welcome to Feelin Seen with Dean, hosted by Dean Michael. Let's get into it.
Have you ever noticed the person that gets treated the most differently in a family is usually the person who ends up changing the most? For years, I thought being the black sheep meant something was wrong with me. At times, I felt too sensitive. Sometimes I asked too many questions. Other times, it seemed like I just didn't fit in. What I didn't realize was that the very thing that made me feel isolated would eventually become the reason I found myself. And if you have ever felt like the odd one out in your family, this video's for you. When people hear the phrase black sheep of the family, they usually think about conflict, arguments, and drama. But that was not my experience. My family loved me. I truly believe that. The problem was not a lack of love. The problem was that the version of me they understood was not the version of me I was becoming. For most of my life, I thought my job was to fit in and to make everybody comfortable. Eventually, life taught me something different. Being the black sheep was not my punishment, it was my assignment. Here's what I mean. My earliest moments of feeling different started when I was a child. Looking back now, nothing dramatic was happening. There was no major argument, neither was there a defining moment. There was just this feeling that everyone seemed to fit somewhere except me. My mother and sister were extremely close. My father and brother were also extremely close. Then there was me, the odd number, the extra piece, the person who quite never knew where he belonged. Growing up, my father paid attention to everything I did. If I crossed my legs, he told me to uncross them. If I crossed my arms, he told me to uncross them. If I spoke softly, he told me to speak louder. And if I expressed myself in a way that appeared feminine, it became something that needed correcting. At the time, I did not understand what was exactly happening, but I always felt like I was being watched and constantly monitored. Eventually, something harmful started happening. I stopped asking, "Am I doing something wrong?" and started asking, "Is something wrong with me?" That's a very different question. Because when a child starts believing who they are is a problem, they begin hiding pieces of themselves. Years later, I realized something. I was not being corrected for what I did. I was being corrected for who I was. And those are two very different experiences. One teaches behavior, and the other teaches shame. For years, I carried the belief that my natural self needed editing, that I needed to sit differently, act a certain way, hide parts of who I was. Now I understand that being different was not the problem. The problem was believing I had to become someone else to be loved. Once you spend years feeling like you are the problem, you start looking for ways to become acceptable. You begin learning which parts of yourself get rewarded and which parts of yourself get rejected. And before you realize it, you become very good at performing. The next lesson I learned as the black sheep, I became whoever everyone needed me to be. After spending years feeling like the problem, I started doing what many black sheep learn to do. I adapted. Rather than asking myself who I was, I became focused on who everyone else wanted me to be. Acceptance felt safer than authenticity. Fitting in felt safer than standing out. And one thing about my family is that appearance matters. Everything around us had to look right. Every detail had to fit the picture. Looking back, the best way I can describe it is this: the frame looked beautiful, but the picture was dusty. From the outside, everything looked wonderful. Yet, beneath the surface, there were conversations that nobody wanted to have, parts of ourselves nobody wanted to face. Eventually, I learned how to play the game. Family gatherings became performances, female friends became easy shields. Questions about relationships became carefully crafted answers. Anything that helped maintain the image became acceptable. Deep down, I knew I was not being honest. Fear kept me there. Fear of rejection. The possibility of letting people down kept me silent. The weight of proving certain family members right kept me hiding. One relative would constantly ask questions. Do you have a girlfriend? What are you even doing these days? Each time I mentioned a girl, anytime I hinted at a relationship, the room seemed more comfortable. Approval would follow, relief would set in, and acceptance came easier. Eventually, I realized something painful. People were not celebrating me, they were celebrating the version of me that made them comfortable. The more I performed, the more approval I received, the more authentic I became, the more uncomfortable things felt. Genuine love should never require you to abandon yourself. Real acceptance should not disappear the moment honesty enters the room. For years, I thought I was protecting relationships. What I was actually protecting was an illusion. Keeping people comfortable became exhausting. Performing became heavy. Eventually, another realization started following. Maybe the reason I struggle to fit into certain spaces was because I was seeing things other people did not want to see. And that's when I discovered something about being the black sheep. They usually are the truth tellers. Something interesting started happening as I got older. Even though I spent years trying to fit in, I never lost one part of myself: my honesty. Growing up, everyone in my family knew who to come to when they wanted to hear the truth. Need fashion advice? Ask Dean. Need a second opinion? Ask Dean. Being honest became a part of my identity. People appreciated it. Many came to depend on it. Well, at least that's what I thought. Eventually, I started noticing a pattern. The same honesty people loved was the same honesty that sometimes got me into trouble. Whenever somebody wanted validation, my honesty was appreciated. Whenever somebody wanted accountability, my honesty became a problem. A strange thing started happening. Family members would come to me looking for an honest opinion. Then, when I gave them the honest opinion they asked for, they did not always like what they heard. Conversations became defensive, feelings became hurt, walls went up. Something else happened too. Instead of dealing directly with the issue, people would often go to talk to somebody else. Before long, the conversation was not about what happened. The conversation became about Dean. Gossip started replacing accountability. Deflection started replacing ownership. Focus shifted from the behavior to the person who pointed out the behavior. The hardest part: nothing I was saying was behind anyone's back that I had not already said directly to their face. That was always important to me. If I had something to say, I believe the person deserves to hear it from me first. Years later, I finally understood something. The problem was not honesty. Sometimes the truth arrives before somebody is ready to receive it. Just as important, the setting often determines how that truth is received. The problem was that the truth feels very different depending on whether someone is ready to receive it. People often say they want honesty, but what many people actually want is agreement. That lesson followed me into friendships. It followed me into workplaces. The same pattern showed up in relationships as well. And family dynamics would reflect it too. For a long time, I thought being the honest person meant something was wrong with me. Now I understand something different. My honesty was not the issue. My issue was expecting everyone to welcome truths they were not prepared to face. That realization helped me to stop taking people's reactions so personally. Once I stopped trying to make everybody comfortable, another shift started happening. Relationships began changing. It was not because I became worse, nor was it because I became selfish. Growth has a funny way of exposing relationships that were built on convenience instead of connection. And that's exactly what happened next. One of the biggest lies I believed was that healing would improve every relationship in my life. I thought becoming healthier would bring people closer. I assumed my growth would be welcomed and celebrated. Sometimes it is, sometimes it is not. As I started healing, I noticed something. The people who benefited from the old version of me struggled the most with the new version of me. Texts became far and few between. Phone calls started happening less often. Friendships that lasted for years started to feel different. It was not because I became arrogant, neither did I think I was better than anybody else. The difference was simple. I stopped overextending myself. Birthday gifts were no longer a priority. I stopped feeling the need to constantly be available. And I stepped away from being everyone else's emotional support system. Boundaries entered the picture, and that's when things changed. People started saying I had changed. Others began noticing I was not the same person anymore. Some even felt like I no longer had time for them. I had changed. Growth requires change. Healing requires elevation, and self respect requires refinement. The version of me they missed was the version of me they benefited from. That realization was painful, but it also was freeing because I finally stopped measuring relationships by history. I started measuring relationships by reciprocity. Something unexpected happened during this period. The relationship that changed the most was not with friends, nor was it with family. It was with myself. Even my relationships with my dogs changed. For years, I lived in survival mode. Everything felt intense. Nothing came easily. As I became softer with myself, I noticed a softer side of my dogs, especially Sophie. The behaviors I once viewed as aggression started fading. Nurturing qualities started appearing. That experience taught me something powerful. The energy we carry does not just affect us, it affects everyone around us. Healing taught me who was willing to grow with me. It also taught me who preferred the old version of me. Yet, the biggest shift was not losing people. The biggest shift was realizing I no longer needed permission to be myself. For years, I wanted understanding. I wanted acceptance. Part of me believed if I could just explain myself well enough, people would finally understand. Then something happened that changed my perspective. A close friend lost a parent. Watching that experience unfold was heartbreaking, and one conversation stayed with me. My friend expressed regret over never fully revealing who they were to their parent, and they felt they were spending too much of their life hiding their authentic identity. That hit me hard because for the first time, I imagined what would it feel like if something happened to my family. Would they actually know the real version of me? Or would they only know the version of me I created for their comfort? That question changed everything. Eventually, it led to beginning my coming out journey without being fearless. Around 7 or 8 years ago, I created a YouTube video sharing my coming out experience. Truthfully, that video was never supposed to be public. Even my mental health therapist advised against me posting the video. After I had gone to a family event that had triggered years of emotions, I hit publish. The moment that video went live, something left my body. Pain I had carried for so long, the silence that had kept me hidden. That video did not fix every relationship, nor did it help everyone understand me. What it did do was set me free. For the first time in my life, I stopped asking for permission to be myself. The energy I spent trying to convince people became energy I could invest into my future. Looking back now, I realized something I wish I understood years earlier. Being the black sheep was never the curse. This misunderstanding was. For most of my life, I viewed being the black sheep as a burden. It felt like a flaw I needed to outgrow. Escaping it felt the only way forward. Years were spent wondering why I felt different. I spent so much time wondering why I never fully fit in. I also questioned why certain relationships always felt conditional. Life eventually showed me something different. Every lesson that transformed my life came from the very things that once made me feel isolated. A deep sense of honesty guided me. Sensitivity became one of my greatest strengths. Curiosity pushed me to ask different questions. Choosing authenticity meant I could no longer pretend. The traits I spent years trying to hide became the traits that helped me heal. Being the black sheep was never the curse. The curse was believing I needed to become someone else to be loved. Perhaps you were not born into your family to fit in. It is possible you were placed into your family to grow beyond what they could teach you. Your purpose may have never been to repeat the pattern. Instead, your purpose may have been to challenge it or to heal it. For years, I thought being different was my burden. Now I understand it was my assignment. If you spent years feeling like the black sheep, I want you to hear this. Your uniqueness does not mean you're broken. Walking your own path does not mean you're difficult. Not fitting the mold does not mean you are unlovable. Sometimes the person who feels the most out of place is the person who was never meant to stay the same. My family taught me many things. Some lessons came from what they did right. Some lessons came from what they got wrong. Both helped shape who I am today. For that reason, I no longer resent being the black sheep. I'm grateful for it. If you enjoyed this video, I would highly recommend you listen to my last podcast, which is about breaking generational curses. Because once you understand the patterns you have inherited, you can finally begin creating new ones. I would highly recommend you watch that podcast next. I'm going to link it right here, and I will see you there.